Hi, I'm Tim Cottle, Vice President at JetOx. At JetOx, we have over 400 people that wake up every day and help organizations around the globe with their forecasting, budgeting, and reporting. I had the opportunity to host a roundtable discussion with some thought leaders in the Office of the CFO. I hope you enjoy it. So thanks for joining, everyone. It's great to get to chat today. I think that, as we're talking to the delegates, one of the biggest topics that people were interested in is talent acquisition, growing people into different roles, retention. So would love to get your thoughts on that in your organizations and some things that have maybe changed or some things that you're really focusing on these days in that regard. I think it'd be really interesting to know.
Okay, I'm happy to take that one. I think I work at Medtronic, so for me, it's been really neat on the talent side because we have a really strong mission that's known from top to bottom. And when you look at sort of what's going on in this world where people, especially the younger generations, the Gen Zers, they want to have a purpose, want to know why they're coming to a company. It's even as important as money, maybe more in some instances. So I think the mission really helps us retain talent. But the other thing we're having to do is spend a lot of time being deliberate, and always have been, on that talent development, coming up with like true ways of doing upskilling, job rotations, and giving people the ability to move around. And we're in 150 countries, so between international assignments and all the kinds of projects that you've got across the globe going on, that has afforded us the ability to really get all different people engaged, and it helps with the retention for sure.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at McDonald's, we just recently came out with kind of a revamped career and talent philosophy across the company. And there's probably like 5 key tenets associated with it. I'm not going to go through all 5, but just 2 that kind of really stand out and resonate for me. One is your career is yours to own, but you don't walk it alone. So it is just clearly defining that employees do need to take responsibility for owning their career, but we're certainly going to be here to kind of help them navigate through the different career paths within McDonald's. But there's got to be that shared responsibility between employee and leadership. And the other one is similar to what you were just talking about. We really encourage folks to get out and get a diversity of different experiences. Similar to you, we're in 100 different countries. We've got even if you stay within the United States, there's so many different things you can get involved with. We want folks to pursue different opportunities because we do see that when you get out of your comfort zone, that's just when you get the most accelerated development. You're learning new things, you're being challenged, you're growing at a rapid pace. That we think is just critical for a future leader. So again, we've got a pretty clear philosophy that we've been communicating, but just 2 that really resonate with me is it's your career, but you don't walk it alone, and then obviously just really encouraging folks to get out there to explore and get some really different experiences that can stretch and motivate and grow them for the future.
Yeah, I think those are both so important, and I think about in my 30-year career just how much it's changed. So it seems like when we came into the marketplace, there were these clearly defined paths, and what's the path to CFO, or how do you go through that, right? Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so employees started asking, and we are in an age now where no, it isn't as clear. There's so many different opportunities. So helping them to just really open their and get that feedback from them on stuff that they're seeing, and with this rapidly changing technology, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ever evolving landscape that we have, we need those employees to be engaged. So I think it's so important.
To try and see their career as an adventure. So I think
Yes.
you can get hung up on if I do this, then I do this, then I do this. Well, there's a lot of great options in paths, and don't get too hung up on what's next. Just get out there and explore, see it as an adventure. I think that helps kind of set the right mindset where, to your point, there used to be very clearly defined career paths. Now we've just got a spaghetti, different tranche of different paths you can kind of pursue, which I think is exciting.
Yeah.
But if you don't see it as an adventure, I think you can get frustrated. If I've done this and I want to do that and just kind of continue to work my way up, that doesn't really happen anymore.
No.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we've done to equip our employees with tools, because a lot of times they'll hear us as executives and we'll talk about that, and they'll still be confused. Well, what does that mean for me? And this last year we had a specific focus for our finance talent on career planning, and we used, they came up with a T-shaped career, where we had everybody fill out a document that kind of showed their experience across the finance pillars, and then maybe even outside of the pillars, and how deep have they gone in the different moves in their career, and helping them visually see where have they been, where have they gotten experience, have they had any M&A, tax, treasury, accounting, how deep in finance have they gone, and so helping them visually see where they've been, and then showing them some T-shaped careers of people in roles that they thought they wanted to take. It helped them visualize, well, where are my gaps? And when my manager's telling me, hey, maybe you should get experience here, that might not have been something that they even thought about, but maybe that is a next step that they take. And so I think, when I think about golf or any other sport, how do we equip them with another club in their bag to be more effective on the course? We found that using data even in their career planning has been really effective. So
Interesting. I think that's really interesting, and I think one of the other interesting things, and you kind of hit on this as well, and you was a bit, is a lot of non-finance, quote unquote, traditional finance skills becoming more and more important in our organization. So I'd love to hear about what skills and roles are really becoming important to you that maybe weren't 10 or 15 years ago, and how are you guys kind of bringing those skills in? Are you growing it internally, bringing people in from outside, kind of a mix?
Yeah, I'll start with a few things on that. So our digital transformation is consuming a ton of our time. And I think when we think about the fear that some of our employees have of being part of the transformation, but also eliminating their roles, that's a real reality. You talked about some of the roles that we had growing up, those may not be needed. ChatGPT, once we attach it to our data, I won't need an analyst doing variance analysis. I'll just ask the system to tell me, and it'll probably be a lot better at it. But we're finding that we've created new career paths by engaging intentionally certain employees with that transformation journey. We may not have them as employees of Schneider Electric for their entire career, but they might make great consultants and great transformation leaders. And some of them are really embracing just the actual role of transforming our systems and our processes and figuring out how to leverage that data. And going back to not just talent attraction, but retention, we're helping them in doing that by letting them use tools that are becoming more relevant. 10 years ago, hiring somebody and asking them to use a system at Schneider Electric would have been like, well, that's not on anybody else's list. Like, why do I want to spend time using that tool? And so having someone engage in a transformation, you're actually giving them an opportunity at a brand new career path.
I think as leaders, we're hearing more and more about upskilling, right? And so taking the time to really develop our internal talent and providing them with new skills, whether it's through education or training or just bringing them into a project to do that. So I think to answer your question, internally, externally, I think it's a combination of both is what I'm seeing. But that upskilling is becoming an important part of what we're doing as leaders.
Absolutely. I agree with everything that's been said, and I think just to add on to that, I think leveraging data insights in the storytelling aspect of what we do is becoming even more important than the past versus kind of the fact-based reporting about what happened. Again, how do we have employees that understand the financial component of it, but can make the connections of the data, even taking operational data, sales data, your financial data, to kind of paint that full picture of what we're seeing within the business, and then to tell a story around it, because the influencing is becoming even more important as we look to get a seat at the table to really make those business decisions. As a CFO, as a finance leader, that's the expectation, that you're going to understand the full business, you're going to help influence those decisions. I think storytelling and just being able to leverage data and insights is just becoming even more important for us, probably not just within finance, but I think just across the business in general.
Cool.
Agreed.
And before we move on, I think as leaders, one of the things that I've found and feedback from our employees is how do we empower them and make them feel that that's okay? Sometimes business continuity can get in the way of someone's career, and so being willing to let them take a new role. One of my biggest challenge was letting one of my top talents go into sales last year. I had I had all these things that I thought that individual could do, and even a group of individuals. But to your point, storytelling, the lessons they can learn while they're younger in their career and still more mobile before they get to a director level role or even a senior manager role where it's harder to place in different parts of the business. Even being willing to let those people go into a different part of the business and get experience later on, that strategic alignment with the business's intent in the finance function, so many values to that, but sometimes we get in the way by not wanting to let them go, right? And I think having our leaders know that they need to be part of that empowerment process, which sometimes is painful, is a big part of it.
And I do think with this new Gen Z coming into the workplace, that's going to become more and more important because they don't want to stay in a position for 3 years, and they want to try new things. So I completely agree with that.
I don't think you can ever go wrong prioritizing the individual's development, even above kind of the business priorities. The business priorities are always work themselves out, like you said, the continuity. But I think if you put the person and the person's individual career plan at the heart of it and prioritize that, you'll figure out the rest of it. So 100%
I love to see the finance leaders go into the business. It actually makes us stronger.
Yeah, absolutely.
I say finance is the language of
selfishly,
business.
It makes my job easier.
It does, absolutely.
Someone who understands numbers, right? You need more finance people in sales and operations
right.
than everywhere else
Yeah.
across the
Yeah.
business. Yeah.
If you have a sales leader that cares about cash, you're doing
Yeah.
something
Right,
right.
yeah, exactly. You don't have to have the conversation that
Right.
cash flow conversion
Right.
matters. You're not just going after revenue.
That's right.
Yeah. So I'm hearing some really fun things, and you mentioned storytelling. I think that since I started in finance, and I won't tell you how long ago that was, the roles have broadened into lots more different skill sets, and I think it's a more fun space. So, what other kind of things, whether it's data, you mentioned data transformation, data wrangling, architecture, what other things do you kind of see people moving into, and do you specifically identify those and have ideas and plans to skill them in those spots?
Yeah, maybe my perspective, less focus about the actual skills and more about the attributes of the person that you're bringing on board. So I really lean into curiosity and learning aptitude. Because I think if you've got somebody who's curious, who just has a desire to continuously learn and to ask good questions, and they've got high learning aptitude, you can throw them in almost any situation, or even as the skill sets change over time, they're going to find a way to continue to evolve and grow with the business. So definitely looking at skill sets, but I think just as a starting point, it's those attributes around curiosity, learning aptitude. I think those individuals will find a way to kind of learn any new skill set that comes their way and just continue to evolve and grow with the business. So I love thinking about curiosity, learning aptitude as key indicators as we think about talent.
Cool.
I think curiosity, learning. You took my top two. I think the other thing is in a lot of finance roles, because there's so much change, I think courage and the interest in teamwork, right? So it's not just networking up. My own personal growth, and I'm sure with you, I'm working now with a lot of the people that were my peers when I was at younger roles. And if you're only managing up, those people might not be in the organization. And so who your peers are when you get up there. So I think looking at people who can build effective partnerships versus climbing over one another, who's working with each other the best, collaboration, like these transformations are touching not just finance, but the business, all different functions of our operations. And so people who can, be someone that I want to work with today. Are you someone that when someone sees your face or sees your phone, they want to answer the call? And then that courage to sometimes challenge assumptions or challenge, I don't think we're thinking about this the right way, because we are looking for people to bust through walls. And so you can't be too afraid to do that, but we don't want people trying to do it alone. So
I think that culture of collaborative innovation has become more and more important, right? And we saw that through the whole COVID thing. It's like, how do we get our work done now in this new environment and all these new technologies being thrown at us? And the companies that really prospered during that time, they really did spur that culture of collaboration. And I think it's more and more important as we continue to see that technology changing, as new market dynamics are thrown at us, right? I always thought, it's going to get back to normal after COVID. There is no such thing anymore about that. And I think this collaborative culture is so important.
Your point on the collaboration and courageous, being brave, I think that's not necessarily something that's always common in finance. And so one of the things that we do, being collaborative and this ability to be brave, I kind of think about it as your ability to influence. We actually have influencing courses that we put some of our people through. And it's several different things that we're teaching our finance folks, but what it is it's a series of steps that teaches them not just how to influence specifically in how you speak, but even how do you take the data and turn the data into something that then you can use to influence the outcome. And what I found is sometimes when we're teaching them that way, it makes it seem like they don't really have to be bold, because what you're doing is you're providing information to your peers or information to your managers that then gives them the aha moment. So I always say the best idea is your idea that everybody else thinks is their idea. And that's kind of a really good way to influence folks.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. I think I tell a lot of dad jokes. My dad. So like one of the things I see in like really great top performing finance organizations is that business partnering. And when your finance person goes to someone in operations, do they go, yes, this person's going to help me make a great decision, or they go, oh man, I got to fill out another spreadsheet. And the answer to that question is pretty telling. And I see, especially with some of the data you mentioned, with some of the digital transformation things happening, is freeing up finance folks from doing a lot of manual tasks to being able to really provide the information you talked about. So can we talk a little bit about digital transformation? I know probably on some level you all are dealing with it. Finance and technology has kind of blossomed in the last 10 or so years. So I'd love to get a feel for how that's impacting your organizations, what kind of strategies you're employing, even types of softwares and things that you found really useful. I think the folks here would love to hear about that.
Well, the pressure and the topic of AI is huge, right? And I think a lot of our investors want to know, how are you using it? Not just how are you leveraging it in the products that you might sell, but how are you using it internally? And I think for Schneider Electric, we're a company that's grown through acquisition over time, and potentially didn't necessarily, do IT integrations at the pace that we should have, not knowing how important they might be to strategic advantages in the future. So, 5 to 6 years ago, we've made a much bigger concerted effort to get all of our systems in at least working in concert together. Getting on a single ERP may not always be the strategy, but simplifying legal entity structure, being able to also go post ERP and create effective data clouds. And all of that takes people who understand not just finance, but the business. And so sometimes pulling people from different roles can be scary for them, right? I mean, there's a lot of people look at those projects, they've been around long enough, those projects can be very time intensive, and the deadlines can be very intimidating. So again, going back to some of the characteristics we're looking for, but making those, telling the story, connecting the dots as a leader. Here's where this might be valuable, and here's where this could actually potentially, lead your career. I actually had the opportunity to work on an implementation in an earlier part of my career. And one of the things I tell my teams is, what a great opportunity to network and learn the business, especially on a transformational with finance. It touches everything. I was working from people with our plants to our operations, our sales, and it gave me a great opportunity to network and become a face of something that I never would have gotten that experience to stay in the back room. So, connecting the dots with folks on why they can be a part of it is also interesting, and an important part of driving those transformations forward so they don't fail. I think a lot of times they fail because we lose, or we can't get the talent to engage in them, and we don't really have the expertise needed. So getting the right people involved and keeping them excited is a critical part.
You mentioned the why, right? And I think, and when we talked about this a little bit earlier, in that I think there are still some of our employees that are very afraid of technology because it will take over their job. But we go back to our jobs are changing, and I've seen it at a couple of the organizations I've been at where we're spending so much time gathering the data, we don't have the time to really understand it or analyze it, so then we are doing fact instead of the storytelling. And so, really helping them to understand the why. But this digital transformation is so critical for where we are going, right? And so it's not when or if, it's now, and how are you going to get there? How fast can you get there?
And I think the important part there too, and we worked through this when we were together at Medtronic, is it's not an IT and finance project. So back to your point, is you're learning the whole business, and you need those business leaders, all of them, to be super supportive of it, and then just having the chance to really understand the business and the other implications. They'll learn things like tax. Well, a lot of times a salesperson has no idea the implications of a decision that might happen to tax. So I think there's so many examples of how if you do this digital transformation and you do it with everyone having a seat at the table, steering team members that are very elevated in the organization, so it doesn't become a tax and IT project, that's critically important.
Yeah.
So one basic example of what I've seen is just like the closing process and the quarterly reviews that you do, getting ready for earnings prep and stuff like that. And this was back when I was at Medtronic. We had a new CEO come in, and he was really struggling as he was getting conflicting data because everybody was gathering their own data separately, and the stories didn't align. And so we did a data transformation, and it's okay, if it doesn't come out of this solution, it's not the record of truth. Then we went to the next level to say, okay, we're standardizing the closing packages so that you're not spending the time creating slides, rather you're spending time answering the questions that are most critical. But people were nervous going into that because they were so used to their own decks and the way that they were going to tell the story to the CEO and CFO. So I think there's just some really low-hanging fruit that we can do that isn't scary, but that shows value right away.
Absolutely. We're in the midst of a finance transformation program at McDonald's, and I spent about 30 minutes this morning going through it, so I'm not going to go through in a lot of detail, but I mean, I think at the heart of it is just how do you improve the employee experience, make their jobs easier, more engaging, more rewarding in the future. And you just think about how easy it is in our personal lives to leverage technology and digital to, I mean, every answer is at our fingertips. You can order any product and have it there within a day, or food products obviously much shorter. So how do we take that same ease and this frictionless experience and really pull that in to the employee experience that we offer in the future? Because today it's too hard to do the jobs that we're asking our employees to do, and it's only going to get more complicated in the future. So we've got the finance transformation piece, but we're not waiting just for all the new systems that come in place. We've actually started like an automation program to try and get people to think about change and embrace change and start to kind of build that change muscle. So we've given them the tools, and we've got a virtual team that then we look for those automation wins. Where can we plug in automation, whether it's reporting or close type activities, and then trying to celebrate that on a quarterly basis just to kind of get people, again, feeling great about the opportunity. And we're talking about the hours that we're eliminating, but at the same time, the headcount's staying the same. So also to kind of break down that fear of, as we free up hours, we're reallocating it back into the business to be more of that strategic partner to drive value. We're not cutting heads. So I think it is just trying to get people, again, to start to build that change muscle and to see that when they do save time, that's time they can go spend with their families or friends or do things that they get excited about outside of work, or to have more rewarding engagement across the business with those value-added conversations. And I think that's helped to get a little bit of momentum going, even as we kind of build out the longer term transformation that we're trying to go, which is going to be more about systems and heavy lifting and so forth.
Yeah. It's kind of a trend I'm sensing from the start of the conversation, is that some of these digital transformations actually help with employee retention, right?
Absolutely.
Because how many times can you make the same spreadsheet over and over again before you want to jump off a bridge?
Oh my God.
And so instead, reallocating those hours to building partnerships, to making better decisions, that's a more fun job.
Absolutely. 100%.
I think it's important too that for so long it was like we're going through a digital transformation or we're going through a finance transformation. And the way I talk to our teams is that transformation is a continuum. So you're never really, and we talked about this, the journey, right? You're never really starting and stopping. You're always transforming, but you're trying to bookend things so people can see that there is a clear end to certain projects, but that it's not like all of a sudden you're going to be, I'm done.
Right.
You're going to continuously move forward and want to make yourself better.
Nice.
I think that's an important point, and I'd love to get your guys' perspective on, so how do you prioritize, right? Because with the number of technologies that are introduced every day, with the opportunities that are in front of us to improve, and yet limited funds, right? We all are facing budgets that are constraining at times, right? And so do you guys have specific ways or methods or processes you go through to help you in prioritizing and thinking through what is that next best thing on that digital transformation?
So we have, we talked about talent and keeping the business involved and not making it's not a finance or a digital transformation, it's a business transformation. Our current Chief Technology Officer for North America actually used to be a VP of Sales in our business, and over 200 people that are working on what we call Project Titan, which is our North America transformation, are from our businesses in different aspects of it. And so they're almost, they're there, they had technical aptitude, but they're bringing that business knowledge, and they have relationships with people in the business who understand what they do and don't want. And so making sure that solution, meets their needs. And so those people, to answer your question more specifically, they really understand what's really critical. So their storytelling, and not just talking about, because a lot of times at the CFO level we might see, well, what's the risk profile, right? What risk am I mitigating? I have systems from acquired companies. The company that we bought that systems for went out of a business. And there might be one consultant left in the market that's still supporting it because we're their customer. We need to get off that system. So there's technical risk involved with staying on that tool. And so we look at that, but then the cost of really creating a system or a process or a standardized way of doing business that is going to be good for the business. Sometimes at the IT, at the finance level, we don't do a good job telling that story. And so we look at the ROI and we say, well, that's not worth it. Or let's just standardize it, no complexity, no customization. And so when we arm those teams with people who know what it's like to be in the field, who can both challenge those individuals to do things differently, but also do a better job of telling the story of why this is valuable, either to our customer, that's usually the most important one, the ease of doing business, that helps in those business cases to justify why we might spend certain things and really help us challenge ourselves to say, okay, we're going to invest the money to do it that way versus take the cheaper route.
It's hard though, and I think especially in a really big company where sometimes it's difficult to tell what's really technical risk versus what the real ROI is, having some type of steering committee as the budgets are coming in, a lot easier said than done. But I think having a core group of people, once they've gone through a lot of these projects, to discuss and debate really how difficult that is. I know within finance we use a product called Workfront. We talked about it a little yesterday, but that is helpful because a lot of times I think individuals think that certain projects are the priority because they got a budget, but then when we're looking for, if there are budget constraints, we need to move things around. It's a really nice visual to see where we are. Maybe we're behind. We should cut that one for this fiscal year. But that's probably one of the biggest difficulties I think there is with how many projects there are out there and how do you organize it and even get it up to the CFO level so that we know how to make trade-offs.
Yeah, I mean, you've hit on one of the biggest challenges we have with prioritization, and there's always more work than capacity. But for us, it was creating a clear business case around finance transformation to really outline what are the outcomes we're looking to go after, the value we're looking to generate. There was a return associated with it as well, which I think just getting leadership alignment on it, I think helps. I think it's easy for leadership to stay aligned to transformation when times are good, and we're fortunate that we've got some good sales momentum and income growth is good. I think the challenge will be if we see a slowdown in the business, sometimes those corporate transformation programs are the first ones that get teed up on the cutting block, which is what we've seen in the past and why frankly we haven't been able to get transformation done within finance in the past. I feel like we've got better alignment, better commitment, but I think the true test will be if we see a little bit of a slowdown in the business, will we really be committed to seeing this through? Hopefully the business case helps with that, but it'll be a challenge for sure.
So a question though on that line, because I always think about if it's up to the business, they may or may not, if it's in their area of responsibility. So how do you take big project decisions on a finance transformation? Is it a centralized decision? And how do you ensure that there's not other little projects going on at the lower level somewhere else because they have budget?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'll share kind of our approach, which is probably not perfect, but in terms of prioritization, we do have a single prioritization kind of structure that would look not just at finance transformation, but what we want to do from a consumer standpoint, a restaurant technology standpoint, and really make prioritization decisions across those major initiatives. And then within finance, we do have a bit of a governance board to make sure that if there's other projects that really pop up, we either figure out how do they fit within our global finance modernization effort, or if they're outside of that scope, we probably shouldn't be doing it because we're really focused on the biggest priorities around how we want to transform finance in the future within that project. Everything else probably needs to be really scrutinized and challenged. So to have a little bit of governance structure around that has helped, and it has helped us kind of cancel or kind of kill some of the other initiatives and work that's out there. But it's tough because people have their passion projects.
Hard.
It's hard. Absolutely. So it's not perfect, but we're certainly working on getting better with prioritization and certainly having a little bit of governance across finance to make sure you don't have some of those zombie projects that just kind of continue year after year after year.
I think strong leadership at the top. So we're a manufacturing company, we grew out of one, and moving leaders around in different parts of our organization. One of our former leaders of our global supply chain, Annette Clayton, who was our CEO of North America for a little while and on the XCOM, she took a concept of a HOSHN, which defines here are our critical priorities. And technically, if it comes down to it, if it's not on this sheet, we're not going to focus on it. And she brought that to the entire company. So in the finance function had a HOSHN, sales had a HOSHN, and throughout the organization. So now, to your point on prioritization, that leadership at the CFO level, it can be a lonely place, right? If you're not pushing it and there's nobody else behind you saying, well, we're going to do it, and then what do we focus on? Then your people might run around and do whatever they think is important, but really having that leadership of saying, here's where we're going, and we can debate it, and you can bring your local perspectives, but at the end of the day, when we walk out of here, here's what we're going to go achieve, really helps empower us to say, look, this is interesting, but it's not on the HOSHN, we agreed, and now we're all going to march and we're going to deliver, and we're going to make sure that this decision, since there's 100 ways to do something, is as successful as we can make it. And that really helps to cut out the noise. So I think strong leadership at the top and understanding enough about what needs to be done and making a choice is another huge enabler to that prioritization, because now no one's confused of, if I don't do this, am I going to get in trouble, or is it not going to be the right thing? providing that clarity for your leaders of here's what we're going to do and focus on, just that confidence that we were talking about earlier can be a huge driver.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as you guys are on these digital transformation journeys and you purchase software, which is essentially a big part of it, there's automation that comes with that. But based on some of the things you guys are saying too, I think there's some culture change, some maybe operational changes that can come with that. Did you guys experience that as you rolled out technology? You know, other ways that's not necessarily the software itself, but just ways that you operate better that it unlocked, whether it's just you had to analyze it while you're putting it in or it just facilitated doing it. Is there anything interesting to talk about like that?
Hey Brenda, it made me think about when we were together working at Medtronic, the integrated business process, a major overhaul we did, and just thought maybe you could talk about that a little bit in terms of what we went through, and then I can give a perspective of how I thought coming in new as you were kind of leaving at that time, how that worked, because it was a massive cultural shift. Is how I remember seeing it.
So thank you, Jen. Yeah, so one of the initiatives I led was integrated business planning at the Medtronic level, so $30 billion company, multiple divisions, and you know your demand process was separated from your supply process and separated from your financial forecasting, right? And so you do a strat plan, set it on a shelf for a year, and then come back and revisit. And really, you know, aligning this data and we needed different skill sets to do that. So on the demand planning side, we went out and looked for more people that were interested in AI and thinking about predictive analytics, not just the typical way that we looked at sales, but you know, how do we look at the healthcare data? How do we add? And sometimes it's not even data you think you're gonna actually be relevant, but when you play around with it and then have machine learning telling you, oh, well, this element is, but getting people that they're not afraid of that, right? Identifying people, again, goes back to courage and curiosity, right? Those type of individuals that will come in and challenge the status quo. And so yeah, we're definitely seeing different types of skill sets that you need as you're thinking through it, and the way that you shape the organization. So my team, there was more, they were in the finance organization, but there were more IT type people that were in there, heavy process, which is typically finance, but I think a little bit different in nature than what I would see in a typical accounting type. Right? And then the whole FP&A group was a little bit different, thinking more, again, not just about the quarter, which we all know the quarter is very, very important, right? Any of us in the public sector, but it's really that 5-year strategic, right? And people want to see, where are we going in 5 years, and what does that look like, and what's the journey, and does our demand support that? Does capacity, right? That's the other thing is I'm seeing with businesses, capacity. We're always in companies I've been, we've always been a little bit behind, either shutting something down or opening something up because we're not really looking at that future. But that's where technology, the right organizational structure, the collaborative, innovative culture becomes so important.
So I'm hearing a lot of change that's happening in your organization. So what I would love is if you guys could talk about the change you've experienced in the CFO org as CFOs and leaders, and then also what do you see coming? What's next for you and your orgs?
For me personally, I mean, I don't think anybody wants the CFO just to be a finance leader. I mean, I'm getting stretched more and more to be kind of an enterprise leader, so to have a perspective about operations, the people function, and to kind of be a catalyst for change, not just within finance, but I think across the company. So a little bit of a disruptor in a positive way to try and, again, identify where we've got risk or opportunities even outside of that finance organization, and just really have that enterprise perspective. The other aspect is more and more finance within McDonald's is becoming like a talent pump across the organization. So we are exporting a lot of talent into areas like operations, out into the field in terms of how we run our restaurants, which is great. It puts a little bit of stress on us to continue to fill that pipeline of talent, but I think there is an expectation, just given, again, the financial and strategic leadership we see coming out of finance. How do we, again, continue to kind of export that talent across the organization? So those are probably 2 areas that I'm kind of being stretched and pulled in within my current role. It's really the enterprise thinking, being a catalyst for change, and then really from a talent perspective, developing talent not just for finance, but really for the broader organization, and how do we continue to export talent? Just knowing that selfishly, I think we've got great talent in finance. I'm sure all of you do too. And how do we get more of that out into the business is to get those critical thinkers.
Yeah, cool.
I completely agree with that. And then I would add it's the strategic part of that, right? More and more, I think the CEOs, the executive teams are looking for us to help them really think through that strategy as well. Before we may have done the numbers around there, but really thinking of us as a
Absolutely.
strategic thought partner, and what does this business look like going forward? And what am I missing? Where are the gaps?
100%.
Yeah, I'll just add, so I serve two roles, but in my role of CFO of one of the divisions, it is absolutely an enterprise leader. It's looking at things that even if I know it might not be self-serving, like there might be divestitures we need to take, there might be sunsetting of projects, and it's really bringing that information through using numbers and analytics to that business leader so that then as the CFO, I'm really almost interchangeable with that leader in how we think. We should be able to do each other's jobs. And I came from an enterprise that did that before. You could do a QBR or you could do any type of XCOM presentation and the CFO or the president could switch places. And I think that's becoming more and more typical of how organizations are running and working.
Absolutely.
Now, you talked about storytelling earlier when we were talking about talent and skills that were important. And that's something I found in my role where, 3 months into the job of CFO of North America, I was asked to go to Washington, D.C. and present on a panel, not about finance, but about sustainability and the role that Europe and the U.S. were playing in that journey. And I was thinking, I've been spending a lot of time in financial operations. This is, that was a growth opportunity for me, but the trust that they had, but also the responsibility of being a spokesperson for the organization. We talk about leaning into operations, that exposure and thinking about it financially, but especially in a publicly traded company, the financial results are a big part of what we're trying to drive. But then helping to connect all the other aspects of the organization. We're leaning more into data. We're leaning more into IT. If you're a technology company, cyber risks are becoming a part of what we're doing, and the legal aspects of that. Transformation we've talked about is consuming, potentially 25% of our workforce at some time. And so that pulls us into all the other facets of the business. And I think I've seen for sure CFOs have a much bigger seat at the table, and we've even heard a lot of companies where they've eliminated the COO, where there's not nearly as many chief operating officers more, and a lot of that's been absorbed by the chief financial office, and which I think another opportunity and reason why we're able to export our talent into different parts of the business, because you take that finance acumen and you put it in the business as we become leaner as a finance organization, which we're going to, right? As we adapt technology and AI, there's going to be an expectation that efficiency converts to headcount at some point. And so what a better place to take financial acumen than to put it into your sales and your operations and your IT businesses. And so it's really, you talked about it, and you've talked about it, we're a coach and we're a talent scout as well.
I think one thing I'd just add, sorry Brenda, is that the importance of in the CFO roles, because there's different levels of CFOs. There's corporate CFOs, there's divisional CFOs, and then there's shared service, whatever you call it. But I think it's really important that there's experience in corporate, in big COEs, and then also out at the divisions. It makes a much rounder overall corporate CFO.
Maybe I'll start with the digital discussion we have, because I think still people, as much as we know we need to do it, people are afraid of it, right? And I would just challenge us all, rather than being afraid of it, look at it as an opportunity. I think there's so much opportunity around there. It can get very overwhelming, but I think there's a way to make it and get some really quick wins. So I'd really encourage people to just really dive into the digital stuff. What you guys have shared with me is really beneficial as I work my way through Trex with some of this stuff as well.
That's great. I think for me, we've talked a lot about curiosity and courage, and I think we need to demonstrate that. So lead with curiosity, and it gets into what you're talking about, the digital transformation, all the change that we're going through. You've got to have a level of curiosity at the CFO level just to continue to embrace that change, to continue to learn, because our jobs are changing rapidly. The businesses we operate in are changing rapidly. It's going to look very different 10 years from now than it does today. So I think just having that level of curiosity, having an open mind to continue to learn, to allow your perspective to change as you kind of get exposed to different people, I think is critical in our roles. And then having the courage to act on that, because it is tough to drive change. It's not easy. Sometimes it's easier to kind of stay where you are versus try and evolve and shape the future. But I think curiosity and courage at that CFO level, really to kind of bring it to life, is going to be really, really important.
Yeah, I think it's something we've been talking about, but really understanding the value of storytelling too at that leadership level, because we're touching so many things in the organization, getting people on board. one of the things that we talked about for the last few years is connecting the dots. Right, there was times when I was an analyst that I didn't know the file that I was putting in a folder, whether it got used, how it was used, if it was used. And that really took away from some of the value that I felt and pride I felt in that role. And so coming from that track, when I get out of a quarterly business review or an important meeting, I make time to go and recognize or email a team and say, hey, that analysis really clarified a conversation. It really helped to make a story or a debate go much simpler. And I think making the job exciting, because these transformational jobs and leading into digital, they can be some of the most intensive jobs that we're talking about. And so realizing what those people are going through and connecting the dots and helping them understand how valuable it is to the organization, but how also what a career opportunity is for them to be a part of that. It's almost, it is a privilege, and the things that can come from that, so.
Yeah, I was going to say, and you said it really well, I think taking care of your talent, showing them that you care. We are in jobs that are high intensity, lots of deadlines, lots of budgets, and sometimes it makes you feel a little less human.
Yeah.
So I think showing you care and really taking the time, even if it's struggling. And then the other thing I would say is, like, leading with humility, and I mean that, like, admitting that you've made mistakes or you didn't understand something, I think makes a really big difference. And then if you can have a little fun,
Yes.
that's nice too, because sometimes it's like you forget that just being at work should be fun, and it can be, but we get so intense. So taking that time to take
Love
care of your
that.
talent and have fun.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, speaking of fun, this has been fun. So thank you all for coming. Wonderful conversation. It's rare that we get thought leaders in a room like this to just chat about their daily lives and where they're going, and I couldn't appreciate it more. I think it was a great chat. So I want to thank all of you for attending and doing a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's a pleasure.
You've been listening to another episode of Executive Platform's Blueprint podcast series. Let's do it again soon.